I accepted Jesus into my life 18 years ago. And ever since then, I wanted as many people as possible to know the peace and the joy and the purpose that I had. And I really had a heart for atheists, so I always had in the back of my mind how I could help atheists see that they had a creator and that this creator was Jesus. This series is not about Jesus being our creator, but it is about the evidence for a creator. Then, less than a year ago, I decided to really dive in to studying the most simple form of life on Earth, the prokaryotic cell, a single-celled organism. Because I thought if we have a creator, then it will be totally obvious in the most simple form of life on Earth. And I was completely shocked and amazed by what I found. I found out that life kills atheism. Life glorifies God. You are probably seeing this video on my YouTube channel and Facebook page that is dedicated to helping atheists. It's called Atheism versus Logic. But I have another page that is dedicated to teaching through the Bible that just goes by my name, Jeremy Spry. And it was probably about 2 years ago that I made a video from one of the Psalms, and I titled the video, "Are You an Atheist?" Now, the purpose of the video was to ask Christians, are you acting like an atheist? Are you acting like you don't believe in God, even though you say you do? But what happened is that video brought on so many atheists to comment, and so I got in all these discussions that I wasn't even trying to get into. And that's really what started this mission. I realized that there is such a huge presence of atheists on YouTube that I eventually decided to interact with more of them and then have my own channel. And even before I had my own channel, I was invited onto an atheist channel to debate him. The atheist YouTuber was Godless Engineer. And then that led to more interactions with other atheists and agnostics, and I've really enjoyed it. But that's what led to the channel. And the thing that I started with when I was debating these atheists is DNA. I had heard that, we all know that DNA from watching Jurassic Park, it's like the blueprint of the living organism, like the recipe. And so I started with that's saying that DNA is information. It's a recipe, it's code. And those things only come from intelligent beings. Those things only come from a mind. And I thought this was a bulletproof attack on atheism and a bulletproof reason for people to believe in God, but I was amazed at how people tried to wiggle out of that. And so that's really what brought this series on, is I decided, hey, I'm going to study the most simple form of life on Earth. If atheists believe that non-life, just chemicals could become life without a creator, then I'm going to study the most simple form of life on Earth, and it should overwhelmingly tell us that chemicals could not become life without a creator. And so what I did is I first started just to look up the definition of DNA, and I found this one. DNA's instructions are used to make proteins in a two-step process. First, enzymes read the information in a DNA molecule and transcribe it into an intermediary molecule called messenger ribonucleic acid, or mRNA. Next, the information contained in the mRNA molecule is translated into the language of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. This language tells the cell's protein-making machinery the precise order in which to link the amino acids to produce a specific protein. This is a major task because there are 20 types of amino acids, which can be placed in many different orders to form a wide variety of proteins. Now, can you believe that people would wiggle out of how obvious that makes a creator? You've got words like instruction and message or messenger and machine. You know, it made me think of a 3D printer. It made me think of the code that is sent to a 3D printer to produce an object, right? And so man, I started using those analogies that DNA is like the code that produces an object from a 3D printer. And I didn't know what that machine was like, and we're going to get into that later. And we're going to get into the messenger RNA later. But let's still continue to focus on DNA. That every organism, whether it be a plant, bacteria, fungus, an animal, a bird, a fish, they all have the recipe, the instructions for what makes them what they are in the DNA. So I simply say this phrase is that a recipe cannot write itself. Code does not write itself. Now, how they try to get out of this is that they say these are just chemicals, and that's easily refuted. I could say a love letter is just ink and paper. And then they try to say that, you know, these kind of chemicals, which DNA is made up of nucleotides, DNA and RNA, and they believe RNA came first. And I don't doubt that nucleotides exist, and I don't doubt that nucleotides join together without a creator. Well, obviously, I believe a creator made them and made the chemical reaction, but here's the thing that they fail at. The sequence. The sequence matters. And this is, man, atheists are constantly trying to dodge this fact. And I tell them repeatedly when they ignore the sequence problem. As I tell them, sequences matter. A random connection of nucleotides does not code for a protein. And you cannot get the code for a protein without a creator. So I want you to listen to this atheist. His name is AronRa. He's probably one of the most famous atheists besides Richard Dawkins. He and I have interacted. I asked him to try to debunk one of my videos. He tried. He couldn't because he totally avoided my issue with atheism, which is the ability for chemicals to put themselves in the right sequences. So pay attention to how he wants, this is a science video, a lesson, and he's trying to teach people about what DNA is, but he's also trying to hold on to his atheism, which is hard. So he tries to say what atheism is, but he doesn't want to call it code. I mean, it definitely fulfills the definition of code, but he doesn't want to call it code. He says it acts like code, but he doesn't want to call it code because he knows that code only comes from intelligence.
Why say deoxyribonucleic acid all the time when you can just call it DNA? It's easier and a faster way to say it and spell it. Likewise, DNA is made of 4 constituent chemical components: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. And these can join together in extremely long and unique sequences, and the order of each section can be very important because that arrangement determines which proteins are created. So when scientists write out these really long sequences, they don't write the whole name again and again and again and again and again. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, over and over again. They just write the first letter of each one and move on to the next item in the chain. So what you get looks like a long string of computer programming code. It's not really letters or language. It's really just a chemical construct and a series of enzymatic reactions. But even if it's not technically a code or a blueprint, it is effectively one because it still serves the same function. It's not even a literal set of instructions, though it does effectively work as one because it perpetuates the cycle of life, where you are and every other living thing is essentially a copy of whatever your ancestors were. It's the chemical formula that makes you, you, and not someone or something else, like an asparagus or a gelatinous mass. DNA controls that chemical. So even if it's not technically a set of instructions or a blueprint, calling it a code of instructional information is effectively functionally correct, and it's easier to understand it that way.
I hope we can all agree that honesty is the big thing here. Be honest with the evidence. Be honest with the definition of DNA. Be honest with what it is. Be honest that a recipe cannot write itself. I made a video called The Atheist Test, where I asked people to blindly type for 5 minutes. You should do it and see if you can get a sensical paragraph, a paragraph that makes sense. Now, you'll probably get some words. It would be very difficult for you to get a sentence, but it will be impossible for you to get a paragraph. And even if you had an infinite amount of time blindly typing, you would get the same results. And the reason why is because you have to use your mind to make something that makes sense. You have to use your mind to keep the mistakes out. You have to know what direction you're going in. Or you could try all possible outcomes, and we know nature doesn't try all possible outcomes. Nature's not keeping a record. If there was no life on Earth and there were nucleotides randomly connecting to each other, nature is not keeping a record of what it tried and what did not code for a functional protein. So, let's be honest. Let's be honest about DNA. Let's be honest that DNA could only come from an intelligent being. DNA codes for proteins. Parts of DNA that were formerly thought of as junk DNA actually does different processes inside the cell that people are figuring out. There was a scientific paper that proposed that 80% of DNA is functional. Now, of course, God gave organisms the ability to adapt to their surroundings, study epigenetics, and some DNA is not used. But oh, how beautiful DNA is. Look in the mirror. Everything that you see came from the instructions in your DNA. Now, I recommend that you start a small group. Get some people together and go through this study together. Each video will be pretty short, and then there'll be questions for you to discuss, and even things for you to try, like the Atheist Test, where you blindly type. Gosh, just do it for 20 seconds and show each other what you came up with. Take off autocorrect if you can. So I hope you'll agree with me that DNA undeniably proves a creator, but we're not done yet. There is so much more going on inside the most simple form of life on Earth. But just agree with me now. Agree with science that DNA proves a creator. DNA is a recipe. DNA is a code. It contains instructions. And those things only come from intelligent beings. DNA kills atheism. Life kills atheism.